When hearing the phrase 1980s counterculture, one's first thought may go to mohawks and funky fashion. However, the 1980s punk scene in America was much more than that. This was an era of politically charged social rebellion with a counterculture against all forms of traditional music, fashion, and lifestyle, also known as the New Romantic Era. But what was the Romantics era, and why does a period over 100 years earlier have any relevancy now? Romanticism was a counterculture response to the Enlightenment and Industrial Revolution that placed emphasis on the environment, nature, traveling, and a lifestyle of liberation and imagination as opposed to reason and conformity. In a time of growing urbanization and overcrowding, Romantics focused on the idea of an individual and life in the natural world. Romanticism had a large influence on literature, music, art, and more, straying away from traditional structures and exploring topics of emotion, idealism, individual liberties, and nature. Music began to stray into a more dramatic and abstract genre, with complex and experimental compositions in opposition to the strict and formal structure of traditional and classical music. This was an impactful, liberating social movement that spread past politics and into art and media, much like the 1980s. It is impossible, however, to understand the nature of these two periods and how they relate without first understanding what counterculture is and how it takes form in society. Countercultures are social movements that oppose mainstream media, culture, and politics in order to push a change or reform on the current culture or society of the population. They often include political actions such as protests and demonstrations in an attempt to draw attention to their issue, but also often include shifts in media, music, art, fashion, etc. Many famous counterculture movements include the Romantics era, the Civil Rights Movement, the 1960s anti-war movement, and the 1980s punk movement. These movements, although created with different goals or priorities, have a lot in common with their techniques and influences used to improve society. This brings us to the following question. Why are the 1980s considered the Neo-Romanticism era, and how was the punk movement influenced by the original Romantic period? The 1980s punk movement emerged in response to a large rise in a far-right conservative Christian climate in American society and politics. The country was experiencing a push towards conservative values with debates on issues regarding guns, abortion, gender roles, etc., and the idea of a nuclear family with traditional values was pushed. The punk scene fought against these ideas, encouraging a lifestyle of individualism, activism, and self-expression. These ideals and morals can be directly traced back to the ones fostered by Romanticism, as they too encourage individualism and the expression of one's beliefs and emotions. Both periods focused on lifting up individuals against systems of power and structure. Romanticism and the 1980s punk scene also both placed a heavy influence on reflecting political and social reforms and ideas into their art, fashion, and music. Romanticism poets and composers created their art and music around emotion and the impact of societal complexities on individuals. They strayed away from conventional ideas and rational thinking and into the lives of everyday people. Punk music followed this romantic method and began making politically charged and angst-ridden music that reflected the feelings of people and youth at the time. People took out their frustrations with the government and society with harsh lyrics and heavy music. Bands and icons of the time further drew from the Romantics by molding it to the description of an archetype known as the Byronic Hero. The Byronic Hero is a character type inspired by the 19th century romantic and poet Lord Byron. Lord Byron was known for his rebellious and moody personality and tendencies to oppose authority or rules. His lifestyle included love affairs and scandals that created his chaotic reputation. The Byronic Hero archetype is classified as a brooding, rebellious, and chaotic character that can also be viewed as the tortured artist individual. This characterization strongly suits the punk bands and artists of the 1980s, as they were rebellious individuals who fought back against the rules and expectations of society and government. Iconic punk bands of the 1980s, such as Dead Kennedys, Black Flag, and Bad Religion, often wrote about their anger and disappointment with the government, allowing their emotions to influence their art just as Byron and other romantics did. Their music paved the way for new genres while also making a political statement. Their defiant personalities and emotional art connect them to the works of Lord Byron, who introduced the archetype, as well as his and many others' works that shifted art and media into an introspective and emotional direction. Overall, the legacy held by Romanticism and its pioneers, such as Lord Byron, lasted long throughout history and paved the way for other social movements, including the counterculture of the 1980s. Their opposition of traditional values and emphasis on art allowed for those like the punk movement to flourish and enact real social impact. Without the Romantics era, the meaning of counterculture and the impact it holds would not be possible, and the expectations of art, and music more specifically, would forever be restricted, preventing a creative and active culture among American society. Even in present day, Romanticism still holds influence with the large hardcore and punk scenes across America that carry the legacy of both the 1980s and the Romantics, pushing the youth to stray away from societal expectations and towards fighting for individual freedoms and social reform.